E adesso vediamo la preparazione dell'uovo in camicia.
And now we will see the preparation of poached egg while we make our chat, in which we will explain what the most important points are to make a nice poached egg. We're putting our pot to a boil, and after it gets to a boil we will add an 8%, around 8% of white wine vinegar. White wine vinegar will be needed to not let the egg white disperse into the water, so it will make it thicken around the egg yolk. It's one of its features. So the water must be strongly boiling. We're going to put the vinegar that we will need as a fixing agent for the egg white. We will make a vortex, a slight vortex that will let the egg go down to the center, and the water floating around it will caress the egg white, making it fold around the egg yolk. It's important, it's going to be a partial cooking, so we'll have a partial coagulation of the egg whites, and even about the eggs we will have a partial coagulation, and in the external part of the yolk will be cooked, and in the central part it will be liquid and it will tend to drip out. The eggs must be very good quality, it's important. I advise you to use a similar container, something like this, if you want even narrower. This is because we need to insert it in the water, and as we insert it, it must be sweet. We must be sweet and not too distant, so we gotta be as close as possible to the water as we insert the egg, because since we have two parts of the egg, yolk and white, they won't have the same fall down into the water, so we gotta try to let them fall down at the same time to avoid for them to separate and having a not regular poaching. Another important thing, the egg must be cold, fridge cold, because since it's cold it will have a harder, tougher structure. If we use room temperature water, we have the risk that when we insert it we have a lower density, so they tend to separate more. Another important thing, we must have an egg that's completely whole. So in the meantime, let's take our container, let's break the egg sweetly, let it fall sweetly in the container, and control that our egg is completely has its integrity, as it is in this case. The water is getting to the temperature we need. Let's start adding the vinegar. Remember that we gotta get to a boiling, but before we insert the egg we have to lower the temperature a little bit, because the water mustn't be boiling too harshly, neither must it be still, so we have to have the right temperature to give a move to the egg as it enters the water. So let's just recap. Acid water boiling, let's lower the heat, create a vortex in the water, fridge cold eggs, very important to have a nice firm structure. Egg is completely whole without any problems. Great quality egg, because we're not making a total cooking to our egg, so we gotta have a safe product health wise. A container that is not too big, and we must insert quickly but sweetly and as close to the water as possible. Do not be intermittent, so it must be like this. So we're almost there. Cooking times we can say that a basic cooking time, even though it's difficult. So okay, taking the fridge egg or room temperature, and the cooking time will change, of course. Taking a extra egg or a category, so dimensions, depending on the dimension, the cooking time will change, and then it will also change based on how we poached. So it's always difficult to give a right proportion. I advise you to cook for around 2 minutes, as from the boiling starts back in the water. Then working on it based on the type of eggs that you're using, you will choose, you will start determining the right cooking time. Start to create the vortex. You can use a tablespoon like this. Always attached to the perimeter of the casserole. Stopping. Don't put the egg right now because the vortex is too strong and it might rip the egg. And I'm inserting the egg. Other important thing of the vortex is not to let the egg attach completely to the base, to avoid for it to attach to it. So what we're doing is that every now and then we are slightly stirring around it to help it, just really caressing it without exaggerating, to help the egg to work nicely. Slower the heat, because in some points there are some temperature changes. Now this temperature is perfect. Maybe use a filtering ladle or something. This is something you use for olives or first verification to drain the egg. So count for about 2 minutes every now and then, just help it. As you're waiting, let's take a whatever dish to present the egg. If you want to make eggs Benedict using the hollandaise sauce we made previously, we usually use as a base, to give more volume to our egg, a bread crouton or a vegetable muffin, and we will cover it with the hollandaise sauce at around 40-45 degrees. Slowly I'm also starting to base on the resistance that the egg, yeah, it's still too soft. Let's wait a little bit. I wanted to give you a couple of advice. When we have to make poached eggs for maybe a lot of people, for our hypothetical international breakfast, maybe they are going to ask 50-40 together, especially if your kitchen is in a hotel with a lot of room. Clearly making poached eggs in like this is the traditional recipe, so you just make it like this. It is a working way that's done especially in front of the client, if we have the right instruments to do it during breakfasts. But there are some containers, silicone containers, where we insert the raw egg. There are some programs in the oven that allow us to make poached egg. Clearly it will never be the same thing. Another technique that we can use is using a plastic foil. This way we can immerse more eggs inside the water. You can take your film, laying it on your container, just lowering it a little bit, attaching it to the sides. Then we are breaking the egg in it, again very softly, closing, taking our film, and just twist it. Maybe you can also use something to close it with. I help myself with the heat to burn the film a little bit, and I submerge it. In this way I obtain more or less the same shape of poached egg, but I can in one casserole put more eggs, 8-10 eggs together, and I can work with more portions. The egg should be ready. Let's remove it. We're just draining it a little bit, putting it on the dish, putting maybe on the side a sauce, pinch of salt, drop of oil to make it shinier, and let's cut through it. So as you can see, the egg is perfectly cooked externally, as you can notice, and it has its liquidy part in the inside, so it's a perfect cooking of the poached eggs. So it's fundamental that the internal part has this structure. Then there are some types of clients that maybe eat more poached eggs, that prefer it a little bit damper in the inside. And with this we finished with the preparation of poached egg.